All right, everybody. So, welcome to the Dynasty podcast. This is going to be, I believe, the podcast right before the cross server starts. And so, in anticipation of that cross server thing going on, we actually have a special guest tonight from Izlude One. This guy is the current guild master of Crescent, one of the top guilds in Izlude One over there. So let me go ahead and pull him in, and we'll go ahead and have him introduce himself. And as usual, I'm with my co-host Thai. Thai,
Hello,
introduce yourself. There you
welcome
go.
everybody.
Tonight we have a special guest.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right.
Hi.
Okay. Hello, everyone. To start it off, my name is actually Emo Guy. Currently a guild master in Izlude 1, and my guild is Crescent. We are currently one of the top guild in the server for the time being, and we plan to stay there. As of the time being, we are doing pretty good. Yeah, I think that's about it, just to sum it up. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, welcome on.
Welcome aboard. Just real quick here. Probably one of the most important things that we usually ask here, and it's always fun to kind of listen to is what is like your history for like what's your Ragnarok online experience? Where did it start?
All right. Okay, I think for everyone here, most of us started Ragnarok since we were a kid. I think it goes the same for me as well. I think I was 9 years old when my older sister actually came back and brought a CD. It
Yeah.
was actually the first Ragnarok online in Malaysia at the time. So me and my older brother, we were having doubts because we do not know what this is, and apparently it was the first MMORPG game in Malaysia for us at the time.
Mhm.
So we started playing it, and upon playing it, we realized that this game was actually very fun. I mean, apart from the game mechanics, right? I
Yeah.
think the one thing that everybody could agree on is actually the community, the people that we have there.
Absolutely.
Everybody was helping everyone out. And if you're dead, then you'll be going around Frontera asking for priests to heal you. It was a very nice game personally for me.
Yeah.
And then I think I actually stopped playing when they started charging the monthly subscription, I think. And back
Yeah.
at that time, my parents personally didn't really like us playing games, so I have to stop
Yeah.
that. And then I actually continued on playing on private servers up to a point where I even managed to become a game master in 3 servers.
Nice.
So we were carrying out events and we were playing up till the fourth job release. And I feel like when it comes to the private server back then, it was more fun because the classes are, I think, a lot more and it's much more vibrant. Like you have the ninja classes,
Mm-hmm.
you have the soul linker classes, taekwon. So it made me more, I think, crazy about the game because it's not always the same thing. But
Yeah.
the one thing that I can always bet on that is basically the community. That's what remains constant. The community is always
was-
nice.
Yeah, that's always a constant with RO, isn't it? It's like no matter like
Yeah.
what version of RO you go into, like the community always kind of plays a big part in it. And it's like I don't think I've ever found a lot of MMORPGs to manage to really capture the way
Yep.
that RO just I feel like organically almost cultivates a community just based on like game mechanics. I feel, and I've never really
Yeah.
been able to pin that down. What do you think that
True.
is?
Basically, it actually all depends on the way you play it because some people, for me personally, goes for RO in terms of game mechanics. Some actually goes in for the community. All right.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I go in for the community. Game mechanics is secondary because, to be honest, as you all know, after the first Ragnarok Online came, then there were multiple private servers that came out. and then they tried to enhance, try to compete with other MMORPG. They even released the Ragnarok 2. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I tried it and I really didn't like it. And then after
Yeah.
that, they actually released Ragnarok Eternal Love. For me personally, also I didn't like it very much,
Yeah,
because the
same.
thing is this. Yeah, because as I said, my priority of playing a game, of course, game mechanic is one of the thing that we play it for,
Mhm.
but we are trying to have a balanced community. With this a mobile game that they actually introduced, it's basically a pay to win game. So this actually creates divide in the community, which is one thing that I
Yeah.
don't really favor.
Yeah.
But I guess this is how we actually proceed from that. So at the end of the day, that's why we still have players who are still in ROM. We still have players who are in ROX, and there are some that actually move to Origin. They will only go to the games that will actually, what they call this, entice what they need. If they are more into the community, some of them are still playing in the RO1 private server. Those who wants to be really really competitive and they want to pay to win, they will actually move over to this tree lah. So
Yeah.
for me, it's basically personal preference on what you are looking for
Yeah.
while you are playing this game. Yeah.
And I think one of the things I think that really play into this whole uh, mobile thing is definitely 100% the community, because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you're free to play, you're like a low spender kind of. It's like you're definitely gonna feel alienated from like a lot of the events, right? It's like you look at like
Yep.
Japero's rankings, right? Like who's on top of there, like Wales. Who's gonna be dominating like the
Mhm.
PvP scenes? Is like who's gonna be up there, like Wales, right? So
Yep.
it makes it imperative almost that like you need to have a good community together, like that's able to like intermingle with each other, with
Mm-hmm.
like different types of budget from like players, because at the end of the day, it's like if the community falls apart and the game falls apart because of it, which is almost always the case, um like who are the whales going to play with their investment, right? It's like no game actually wants
It's
to have
true.
that happen. So it's
Yes.
yeah. um but yeah, so with that said, like, and it's actually, I always ask that question, like, well, actually me and Tayo usually always ask that question, because like both of us also have history with like R1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always fun, right, to hear
Yeah.
people's like stories and
Yeah.
like the experience with RO. And
And one of the best time in my life.
yeah, yeah, that was really fun. That was a more like innocent time. Nobody really
Yep.
knew game mechanics all that much. Like people thought luck was like better drop chance or whatever. And
Yeah, true.
yeah, you'd see like acolyte classes critting in culvert and dying because they have no damage survivability. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
true, true.
yeah. So another thing too, like I wanted to ask you, and this is something that we discussed, right, Thai, in
Mhm.
last week's podcast. If you want to do the honors.
Um. Oh, about like where. So the question is, for the past few months, like, how are you feeling about Rue, and like, where do you feel your guild is at, and how have you dealt with like any of the issues that have come up with like the game itself and/or like meta changes?
Okay. This would be a very big issue, big matter actually. If I want to explain it, it will actually be quite lengthful. Is it okay with you guys?
Oh no, yeah, and actually, like that's
Yeah. All right. Okay. The thing is, I think for most of the people out there, they have this perception where it's easy to run a guild. The only thing you need is actually proper whales, and basically you're good. It is one of the factor as well, but as I said, it's not really the deciding factor, because for me personally, I would like to divide it into challenges. So you have the external challenges about managing a guild, as well as internal challenges.
yeah,
So I presume every guild will face the same issue when it comes to external challenges. One is actually recruitment. All right.
mm,
Recruitment is always challenging, because there will be new players coming in, there will be players leaving, and as we all know, at times when the server becomes too overpowered or being what do you call this? There's too many whales in the server. Most of the F2P players starts to leave, or some of the semi players starts to leave. So this is also
Yeah.
an issue for us trying to keep up their morale. So recruitment has always been challenging. And another thing, when it comes to being a guild leader, at times you have to make certain agreements, certain deals that sometimes doesn't even favor you, but it's for the benefit of the guild. You
Yeah.
know, so this is I felt like one of the challenges that we always have to face. Second thing is, when it comes to advertising ourselves, it's also an issue, because for you to attract good players, right, you must have something that you can show it to them.
Yeah.
Some players, personally, I think one of the things that I really did not like about this game is because they actually show your DP. So a lot of people is only focused on that, you know, the
Yeah.
DP. So uh, we try our best to bring all these guys, and we try to discuss with them that DP is one thing, it's one of the criteria as well, but it's also that you need to have a certain synergy between classes. Because if you play RO from the first RO, you will always know that there's always a class that can counter another class. You can never be a god. Even if you're a whale on one class, there's always going to be another whale on the different class. It's just that their skills will overpower you. They are built that way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if let's say like right now we have paladins, right? Of course, the biggest enemy of paladins would be champions, and later on we will have the alchemists, you know? So, for me, DP is one thing, but to educate that the community that DP is not the whole factor, it's a bit tough at times.
It can be very
You know?
deceiving.
I agree.
It's probably
Yeah, I
there.
agree with that.
Yeah, because that's one of the thing that I also face, and I think since we are in a C server, to be honest, public image, this is one of the toughest issue that I have to manage. Yeah. We all know for a C server, in any games you play, regardless, because I played Mobile Legends, I played Dota, I played Counter-Strike, all of this game. When it comes to a C server, it's natural for these guys to have a very competitive nature.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes trash talk and all this
Yeah.
toxic behavior will be present.
Yeah.
So yeah, at times being the face of a guild leader, being the face of the guild is a bit tough, because you have a lot of responsibilities. Everything you do, everything you decide is tied to the public perception of the guild. If you make a mistake, the guild is brought down.
Yeah.
And if any of the members make a mistake as well, right? Because we have this thing. I don't know about your servers, but for my personal my server currently, there's sometimes people who don't. They create a party of BBDB, a bloody branch, but they don't actually use it. Then it will just spread like wildfire in the wild chat, in the world chat.
Yeah.
So it implies to the guild as well.
Yeah.
So
it's
yeah,
always the
this is
name and guild, and then scammer BBDB. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, true. And I think another thing that one factor that people always forget, it's basically the sense of self versus the guild. People always forget that even as a guild leader, or even as an officer or vice guild leader, it doesn't really matter. The whole point is you are a player as well. Sometimes you are also there to enjoy the game, you know.
Yeah.
So people don't see that. You know, we are trying our best to be a strong player. At the same time, we are trying to bring the guild forward. So we are not just a mere manager of the guild. We are also players like you. We want to come here and enjoy our childhood game, you know. So this is, for me personally, it's a bit tough. Because when we were young, we tend to be nice to everyone. But when it comes to managing a guild, as I said, at times you have to do some tough decision that might affect others. Whether you like it or not, you have to face that, you know, in the betterment of the game.
Yeah.
So for me, that will be the external challenges. Now let's get into the fun part, the internal
ones. Oh boy, this is a
oh god,
eternal struggle in every guild.
Yeah, internal struggle of every guild. So I don't know about your server, but personally for our server, there's a lot of spies in every guild.
Oh yeah.
Always.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, personally, for me, I don't encourage this, but I mean, it's fair play.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, I don't really mind as long as it promotes competitiveness and for us to play together. I'm fine with that. But I think the main thing about internal challenges that we have is actually to establish a culture. Crescent is actually not a guild based in any countries because I know like certain guilds like Alt F4 Mana they are based in
Yeah.
a certain country,
PH guilds,
but
Indonesian guilds. Yeah.
yeah, but Crescent actually we are made up from all walks of life. Basically myself as a guild leader, I'm from Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
My vice guild leader is from Philippines. My another vice guild leader is from Indonesia. So most of our officers are made up from Indonesia, from the Philippines as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we have all walks of life over here. So we have to cater with different kind of people. We have to cater what I call this to all the needs. You know, we
Yeah.
have some players who are from what I call this Chile. There are some players from the European side as well who came and
Yeah.
joined us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one thing that differentiates us is the culture. Some things that I might say to the C players, they might be okay, but some things that we say to
Yeah.
the overseas player might sound
Y-
different to them.
yeah, you
Mhm.
probably like experience the same thing as well. It's like
Yeah,
I always receive DMs from people on Discord or in game. X person like said this, Y person said this, and
yeah,
person like person X got offended, person Y got offended, and then you look at it because you have experience from like all perspectives and from like all cultures, and then you understand like, oh, I understand why this is not offensive for X, and I see why this is not offensive for Y. And then you kind
yeah,
of like just find out that way and just like explain it to them like, hey, we see the thing is like in the Philippines this is very offensive, like or like in yeah, hey, you see like in the US like this is not really offensive like to us, something
yeah,
like that, right? Like it's just like this is like a joke, just a joke to us, like nothing serious. And then a lot of the times they just accept it, because I mean it's easily they can Google it, right? Like they can just Google it,
yeah,
like this is actually like what this is, and then you know sometimes there's some people that are pretty hard headed, they're pretty stubborn, and they refuse to get unoffended because they're already like in that heated moment. It's like they already quote unquote like pretty much like got pissed off, and they
hmm
a lot of the time there are some people that refuse to get out of that state, and then um yeah like how would you manage that?
Okay, so basically what we did was we came up with a culture because the way that we manage the guild, um, we basically discuss everything with the officers. So we always have weekly officers meeting,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the agreement of everyone because that's one of the I think one of the wonderful thing in Crescent is because all the officers are made up from different nationalities.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we even have Thai players as well. So we have to make sure that it will work out for all walks of life. So one thing that we all agreed on was to establish a culture that we are a competitive guild, regardless of whatever happens. So we
Yeah.
have to make them understand what does it mean by being a competitive guild. Does it mean you have to be a big spender? Does it mean that you have to be a constant winner? For me personally, what we have been advising all our members, it's basically means that we are here to fight. No
Mhm.
matter who are we against, who are we against?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. It's gonna be whales, planktons, F2P, third, fourth tier guild, first guild. We are always gonna give our best,
Yeah.
regardless. It's basically our desire to compete and train as well as practice to make us as competitive as possible. All right. And
Yeah.
we are driven by being hardworking, and winning is basically just a byproduct.
Yeah.
There are times we are gonna win, there are times we're gonna lose. This is a game. There's only two outcomes. But
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
me personally, losing doesn't it's not really a bad thing. It's an opportunity for us to train, to go back to the drawing board, try to
Yeah.
figure out what is wrong. Because
Yeah.
being on top all the time, it's a bit for me it's not
It,
really all positive. It's at times
yeah.
could be negative as well. You tend to get complacent.
It brings a lot
Yep.
of
Yeah.
complacency. Yeah, like
Mhm.
me, I knows as well.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
It's like a constant reminder almost you have to give people, because like people tend to get complacent. And the good thing
yes,
about losing is that anything that you do inherently has a weakness, right? And the only way that
yep,
that gets exposed, I mean, if you're a leader, like take for example like Gift League, right? If even if we're winning, I see a lot of mistakes that we
hmm
do, a lot, like very glaring mistakes that I'm like, if we don't fix this, we're screwed. A lot of people don't see it that way. They just see the victory and it's just like, eh, don't be a killjoy. It's like we won, just be happy, celebrate. But then in your mind as a guild leader, you're already thinking like, hey, if we bring this type of performance into like cross server, we're gonna get
hmm
exposed. And
yep,
it's like as a guilder, you almost want to just lose right out the gate in cross
yeah,
server when you hear your guild like saying that stuff, because um what happens then is that like what may be very clear to you, even if you're winning, is not clear to them, but it will
hmm
be incredibly clear to them once they start losing. And once like they start getting trash talk, once they start getting memed on, once like they see people like making videos, putting out their mistakes. Because I think it's very inherent. Like as somebody, I live in the U.S., but I grew up in the Philippines, so I
hmm
know very like I'm very close to like how the shame culture almost exists for like Southeast Asia, like how
oh,
it is, right? A lot of the times people refuse to fix any mistake, very stubborn, very like just like I'm right until you get publicly shamed almost, right?
yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? Um,
yeah,
I feel like it's a very toxic like trait that like I feel like we have.
hmm
And unfortunately, sometimes that's the only solution, right?
yeah, true. But as it is, like, the problem, I think most of Southeast Asia players is basically the ego. Personally, I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us, when it comes to game, we like to win, regardless of whatever happens, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, in order to actually do this, for them to actually join us, we actually tell them our culture and our goals. And to be honest, for Crescent personally, we handle the guild by explaining everything to them, and we ensure that this is a no toxic community. Everybody could ask as a dumb question, doesn't really matter, or if you want any help. And because in Crescent itself, one thing that I really love about our community is from the top guys till the bottom guys, everyone is sharing their experience. Doesn't matter as much as they can in terms of equipment,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of BP, in terms of the what it calls mechanics. So these are the things that actually help us. Because the one thing they do understand is based on the goals that we created, what do we actually want to achieve? Do we want to only be top one? Do we only want to be the friendliest guild? Or do we want to be the guild that lives the longest? But everyone agrees to one point that the goal is being competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever
Mhm.
the outcome that we get, it doesn't matter as long as we work as a team and manage to get and do our best to actually, get the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me personally is in RO origin personally for me, it differs a lot from ROX and ROM, where the one whale could actually wipe out the entire guild.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But when it
Yeah.
comes to Origin, it's I wouldn't say it's balanced, but the fighting chance is still there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To some
Yeah.
Like
degree.
So
we know that
yeah,
firsthand on NA.
Yeah.
yeah. So the one thing I realized about some of the players currently in the server, I think you might experience it as well. Some people actually look at GLM as like an evaluation, for the cross server as well.
Yeah.
But some of them don't really know the mechanics later on when it comes to Wolf Imperium, where there would be no
Mhm.
pads and you'll be really be reliant on your teammates. That's where the real show is, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, that's why the only way for us to move forward and get past this is to make sure that we establish a culture, which is a competitive culture, and we have to be very clear about the goals that we want to achieve.
Yeah.
And from there on, I think it's pretty. I wouldn't say easy, but more manageable that way.
Yeah. It's always good to like just have expectations be clear, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're gonna have people that are still going to like not understand that, but like for the most part, you have a reference they can put into like, hey, you signed up for this. Like this is when you joined the guild, we had this description over here, and you knew what you were getting into. If that's not what you're looking for, then I don't know. Maybe hopefully you find that experience somewhere else, or I don't know. Maybe next time you should probably read the fine print because that's important in game and in real life as well when you sign contracts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely very important to be on the same page if you're going to work together.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I think another thing that I would like to address is actually managing the morale. This is one of the things that I
Yeah,
see a lot of people don't really know. Because let me be very clear, all right, to everyone who's in a guild, regardless of whichever server you are in. Trust me, when you lose a game, like an event or something, your officers, your guild leader might seem okay, but trust me, they're not. All right, we will
yeah,
have a discussion on trying to improve ourselves. But
yeah,
that's one of the things that was a bit hard because when you're down as among the management of the guild, you
hmm,
have to bring people up, you know. So
Mhm.
you always have to have a positive mindset, and I think that's a bit challenging for everyone. But
yeah,
so what do we do usually in the game is sometimes we just have fun. We do some BB events. Sometimes we have a raffle event. Sometimes we do have a hide and seek event just to boost the players' morale. You know, try to tell them that competitive is one thing, PvP is one thing, but don't forget that 90% of the game is basically focused on the community and the PvE experience. You
yeah,
know, so don't be too focused on that. You know, until you lose out the whole point of playing a game, which is to have fun, to make
yeah,
friends, and at
yeah.
the same
Mhm.
time try our best to win. Yeah.
And the way that I always say, like, it's I mean, you can probably share the same sentiment with like forming a community as well, or a gaming community, is that you know it's not just about the one game, right? Like, so one game that you're all very focused right now. It's like the whole community is focused on this. But at the same time, right? Like, like we all realize that like a lot of these, especially like mobile games, in terms of like longevity, in terms of their popularity. Like
Yep.
the decline is a lot sharper than PC MMORPGs, right?
Yep. Correct.
Mhm.
So but there's always going to be future games, right? So if
Yes.
once you integrate yourself with the community and I mean you integrate yourself because of the fact that like you get along with these people, then it becomes very easy for you to be in a position where if there's a future game that these like-minded people are interested in as well, chances are you're interested in them as well. Then what happens then is that you guys can all go in as a community, and that's why like you see all these games sometimes, right? It's you see the same names in like any MMORPG out there. There's always that
Yep.
one or two like community that's like a familiar name, and they always do good to like a certain degree. They're not always like top one in whatever they do, but you can like
Yep.
they always have like a position like towards like the top,
Yep.
if they put their whole community behind it. And
Mhm.
just having that type of organization environment like gives you an edge already, especially if you're trying to be a competitive player.
Mhm.
Then that's something that you're looking for instead of like starting the game by yourself and joining a guild and hoping that this guild actually has the same goals as you do, versus being
Mhm.
in
Yep.
a community where the environment is already like that.
True.
Yeah.
Well, personally, for me, that's one thing that people always forget because they always judge the game based on what it is currently, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
actually look further in the future. Because I think like most of the players currently, initially they came in with the hype. Most of the members came in because
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to be part of the hype, but
Yeah.
after 2 3 months into the game, they actually they quit because probably there's no one there to properly guide them and try to boost their morale. Because personally for me, this game could last a very long time. It's not about a 3 months progression. We're talking about years to come, and we still have like Korean server who is still up and running.
Mm-hmm.
NA, we have Japanese server. It will take time changes will happen. You will progress. The only difference between a whale and yourself is whales will progress much more faster than you.
Mhm.
You will get that eventually, right? But
Mm-hmm.
while you're doing that, one thing that you don't have the luxury of actually spending, you have the time to actually spend it with your friends, talk,
Yeah.
help each other out. That's what Meat Spenders F2P does, that's what we do.
Yeah. So
So
Mm-hmm.
the one thing, yeah, I always try to emphasize on them is only one thing. We need to remember the keyword is consistency. That's
yeah,
all.
yeah. So like
Yep.
in any mobile game, I mean in any MMORPG really, there's always this thing that I always say where it's like he who lasts the longest wins, right? So people who actually stay and play the game, because the nature of MMORPGs usually, and like the nature of mobile MMOs as well, is that if you are not consistent with a game, usually you'll
Mhm.
be behind to a certain degree. Whereas like if even if you're free to play from the very beginning, if you've just been consistently playing the game, playing it for enjoyment, and not comparing yourselves to whales, for example, because like you know what they like you say, right? It's how does the saying go again? Comparison is the thief of joy. Um,
Yep.
you're gonna bring yourself down if you compare. Like if you go into a mobile
Mm-hmm.
game or any MMO, now let's be
Hmm.
real. Any MMORPG has some element of pay to win, whether internal or external, right? External
True.
would be like somebody who can afford it will hire somebody to grind for them for to get gear, right? That's a form of pay to win. It's not so blatant pay to win, but it's pay to win. And then you have mobile games that have like internal pay to win, and it's always
Hmm.
going to exist, right? Whether it's in game in real life, it's always some way, some form. It's always going to exist. Um, but the whole thing is that you need to play the game for you, right? You need to play the game
Yes,
for
true.
you, for your own enjoyment, and you need to surround yourself as well. And it's kind of like a sense of you as well. If you surround yourself with like-minded people that you get along
Mm-hmm.
with and you have the same goals with and you're friends with, because a lot of these people, like somebody like CA in the chat said, he's been playing with his squad and friends since DNM and other games. Most really is like Rue Global, right? So it's like you're gonna have people that you enjoy playing the game with or playing games with, and you know it's gonna carry over.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely makes the games more enjoyable.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's hope that this origin stays long.
I think so. If
Yeah.
they continue with their plans,
Yeah.
so
So far, yeah, I think another challenges when it comes to this origin that I think that all of us face is the content. I think it's a bit too fast compared to the Korean server, Taiwan, and NA. Like one of the things is like educating the members is a bit tough. I don't know
mhm.
about you guys, but personally for us, there's a lot of members who have issues of actually trying to understand the events and also the mechanics. This is
Yeah,
one of the things that's a bit tough because you can't introduce. I mean, it's good that you actually updating the contents of the game, but
mhm.
you must give a certain gap because players
Yeah,
are trying to comprehend one issue and then suddenly you bring up another issue, so it's a bit tough to manage as
yeah,
well. Like, yeah, you just finish your feathers and then you went on to your medals, and then out of the blue, the sigil came,
sigil, yeah,
and
Yeah.
then the statue came. So we had to thank God we have a lot of members who are in the guild who have a lot of experience back in KR and NA. So we
mm,
help each other out. So I think that's one of the challenges as well, to educate the members in terms of the game mechanics. And personally, for me, I think it is good, but I think it's a bit too fast that we might
Yeah.
lose out some of the what do you call this competitiveness based on that. I
yeah,
think people tend to get demoralized very quickly.
yeah. Because
Yeah, I
like,
think I understand why they're rushing it because they want player retention. Because that was a problem with like the other servers like NA. Is like the updates were too far apart. But here they're trying to kind of rush it a bit faster. But um, I do agree with you that like for some newer players that don't have any experience, that can be like really like daunting for them. Like having to pinpoint and figure out every little thing, like feathers, sigils, statues.
mhm. That's true. Yeah, it's like they kind of seem to miss the mark of like a happy medium. In KRNA, it was too slow. KR I could understand, right? Because like that's the first server. Like it's going to be
Hmm.
it's the first one is always going to be slow. NA they had an opportunity and they stretched it out too far.
Yeah, way too far.
Yeah, way too far. We started with almost like 200 people to start with, and then by the end of it, we barely had enough to get like 30 people in a War of Imperium. That's how long
Yeah.
the War of Imperium itself, for example, like
Yeah.
took to release.
Most of the player base left before War of Imperium even came out in NA just because of like how long they had to wait.
Yeah, it was like 6 months, I
Yeah.
think.
Hmm.
Well, I think that the one thing that I really feel a bit disappointed with Origin is because of the content. They have to understand most of the C players. I would say roughly about 60% is actually free to play.
Mhm.
So they make up a huge numbers of all the servers that we are playing in.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
one thing that I think the challenges is to boost up the morale when it comes to all these kind of scenarios. We have to have all these players in because as what you said, right? If at one point where everybody starts leaving, and you only have like 10 party of whale in one of Imperium
Yeah.
game versus the
Yeah.
other 10, it's not gonna be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but the content that was released, like for sigils and all the statues, it was supposed to be for the end game, or probably
Hmm.
somewhere about the mid game that is gonna be slightly
Mhm.
balanced. It will be an added advantage, but it's not gonna be the whole what do you call this? It's like just gonna put a bomb on you where it just changes everything. It's not supposed to do that. So with this content that has been being updated constantly and too quickly, it actually makes a lot of people demoralized lah. I mean, it happens to everyone, but it's a bit tough to make them understand that
Yeah.
the biggest, personally for me, the biggest objective is War of Imperium. For those guys that have been playing from Ragnarok 1,
Yeah.
uh, ROX,
Hmm.
ROM, you always know that War of Imperium is the one that you really want to and really like enjoy the content.
It's the most
So,
iconic.
and yeah, as until the day that event is actually released in C server, it's actually quite tough to say like who can actually win and who what do you call this, who can be the toughest among all of them, because at
Mhm.
that point you will really need to be reliant on all of your guild members as
Yeah.
well as your alliance as well. Yeah, alliance, that's another story.
Yeah. That. Oh man, managing alliances. Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Yep.
whole different story right there.
Yeah, that's another one thing that I would actually, because I think today, for me to come over for today was actually I'm trying my best to educate the people and try to make them understand how does a guild work. It might
Hmm.
look nice on the outside, but on the inside, there's a lot of people working in the background.
Yeah. A
If
lot.
Like
you,
yeah, when it comes to the players, managing the players, the strategies, the battlefield, that's one thing. Among the things that we also have to do is actually to manage the players' emotion as well. And on top of that, we have to manage the alliance as well.
yeah,
And alliances, as I said from the start, being a part of the management, at times you have to make a certain decision, and this is a bit tough because
yeah,
they would want something. As I said, there's nothing in the world that is free anymore, right?
yeah,
Even alliance will cost you something.
yeah.
So yeah, that is a bit tough.
Um, the other thing too is like the tough part is always realigning people's goals into one thing because you're always gonna have those me like players, right?
Hmm.
Which is always it's always gonna be tough. Let's be real. And
Mm-hmm.
um, it goes for your own guild, and then that goes extra for people in your alliance because like in your guild there's some level of management that you can do. In alliances, like they have a whole different perspective of you. Like they're not their
Yes.
leadership. Their leadership might have like a very balanced over outlook towards you, but their members could care less about you, right? Just
Hmm.
to start, like they probably could say any random thing and they just wouldn't care, even if it's like the most unfair opinion whatsoever. And that's always the hard part about like managing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I could vouch for that. it's a bit tough because once you it's basically like two nations actually trying to make a
Mm-hmm.
deal.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to think about their own players. We have to think about our players and does it align with our objective? And at the same time, when you're on top of the server, right, there's not going to be a lot of strong guilds around. So for you to make alliance, probably the other strong guild won't want to make an alliance with you because, of course, if every strong guild in the server does make an alliance, then the game will be boring, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Mhm.
one of the things that we also have to take into account into going into the game because we don't want to just what they call this rule or dominate the server by not being by making it easy. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
be fun. As I said, there's a lot of things. Losing demoralizes you as well as winning. If things are too easy, then you tend to get complacent and you start to get bored.
You
That's why
can't win,
sometimes you have to like
basically.
basically that's
There's no
either
winning.
way there's no winning. I mean, this is what happens generally in the previous game, ROX, where at times even the whales are most of the time they are just piloting their ID. They don't play
Mm-hmm.
anymore because for
Yeah.
them it's pretty boring.
Yeah.
So the only one they only came for when it comes to the cross server, where they have the war of the champions, all these things. That is where they really focus on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why it having these dominant guilds in each server kind of like makes sense a little bit now because before you wouldn't want that really. Uh, I know like in NA even when we were one of the top guilds over there, we would still branch out and like just help out like other smaller guilds because like we understand that concept, right? Like without your free to play players, without like the smaller guilds, without the community, kind of like how a country is nothing without their people. That's the majority of your population, right?
Yeah,
That's
true.
yeah, that's just what it is. So
Mm.
now there kind of like is a banner that you can go under with cross server. There's like a bit more justification to it,
Mhm.
and you know you can kind of I guess watch now because the reason why I don't really talk a lot of trash in our server. I don't like attack people in world chat whatever something like that is because like I'm well aware that if we're trying to be competitive in cross server, you can't really compete, right? Because like
Yep.
I'm fine with losing. I just want to be able to put up a fight at least. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
True. We're not
Yeah.
gonna give it to you that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
True.
like for
True.
example,
Yeah.
right? Like on a more realistic like setting, you look at servers like Frontera, right? Like let's say like for example like Frontera 1. When you look at Frontera, you see their top like their top 50 is crazy. It makes Izlude 7's like top 50 of people from different guilds already look like their top 200 plus, like 200 and
Yep.
above. That's basically what it is. Like when we looked at the numbers, um, and then you look at like your top 50 and it's different guilds, and you look at their top 50 and you see like a lot of this, like probably like maybe 90% of the top 50 in Frontera, or like 85%, a huge percentage of the top players in Frontera are in Legends.
Mhm.
So not only are you getting gap gear wise, and now they're actually even more, I guess you could say, united over there towards a common
Mhm.
goal. And then you look at that and it's like, realistically, you think to yourself, yeah, we're not gonna win that. But do we want to just like just throw in the towel and like give up? Like, not really. It's
Yeah.
like,
True.
you're competitive
Yeah.
for a reason, right? Is you want to compete. It doesn't matter if you lose. It doesn't matter if you win. Like, you just want to be able to compete to the highest level that you possibly can and try to win, right? Not just like not show up. Because like, what's the
Yeah.
point of
True.
calling yourself a competitive guild if the whole thing about being competitive guild in the root word compete is not something that you're even willing to do just because you don't think you're gonna win.
Yep. True.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's one of the things that I really emphasize in the guild, and I try my best to let everybody get into the same mindset that I have. So, but personally, for Crescent, it's in the rule. There's no trash talk allowed. Any trash talk will actually lead to the removal of the guild.
Mhm.
So basically, all of Crescent really follow the rule. And personally, for me, they are all the best of gentlemen that we can have in the server. Everybody is very nice.
Mhm.
And as what we are trying to do is we are trying our best to uh, basically educate people on the concept of competitive. It's one of the thing that is always talked about, about being competitive, and some people always get the
Mhm.
wrong idea on that. And as far as cross server, for me personally, we will try our best because currently we are paired up even with you guys, right? So, one thing I would say is that we will die trying, try to win the game. We will not make it easy for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still have our pride as a competitive player, and we'll go in with the confidence that we have. I
Mhm.
will try our best and give it all that we have to actually win the game. For
Mhm.
me, at the end of the day, if we do try our best and we give it our all, and even if we lose, at the end of the day, I'm still happy because we did what we wanted to do, and
Yeah.
we show it out there that even though whatever happens, we'll stick with our guns.
Yeah.
We'll be coming in and giving it our all.
Yeah. So, what I wanted to ask you, by the way, before we get into the whole cross server, that's another question I wanted to ask you was,
Mm-hmm,
like during these like 2 something months that Rue has been, right? It's a whole
mm-hmm,
different ball game, it's a whole different like crowd. What are the what are like the few off the top of your head? What are like the key things that you learned like through this like whole process that you're like, you probably led a guild or a community in a different game, but now
mm-hmm.
this with this one in particular, what are like some of the things that you're like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
Okay. Personally, I think the only thing that differs Ragnarok and when it comes to other games, I think first of all is preparing for all this crossover and whatnot. You actually have to prepare to have a good community first. That's basically the foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Ragnarok, you are much closer to all the members, and most of the games that you played, you don't really have that much of what do you call these members that you have to manage besides Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, for me, I mean, like you, if you play like Mobile Legend, probably would be a team of five. You're just handling a squad of five members.
Yeah.
You play Dota, it's roughly the same squad of five members. You play Counter Strike, it's always the same. You play
Mm-hmm.
Valorant or any game, basically the numbers doesn't usually go up to 3 digits. So one of the things that I really learned about actually preparing for all this, that you actually starts to learn about people's culture. As I like to emphasize again, they always have different mindset, and to align them into that one mindset and that
Mm-hmm.
one goal,
Mm-hmm.
it's always difficult.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Mhm.
always difficult. That is one thing that when it comes to us, we that's why I we had to actually create a management that is built up of different nationalities to overcome that issue. It's not easy. It's
Yeah.
not something that it's doable in a day, and all the habits and whatnot we have instilled this from the day one since we started OBT. And then we had people who were competitive, but they do not know how to channel that competitiveness in,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And then there are some people who are not. As I said, we always have this assumption that when someone plays a game, they should know all the basic what you call this app regarding to the game. For example, it's like Discord. Initially it was
Yeah.
very tough
Getting people to
to
Discord
tell
is
them.
a huge struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
still is.
Yeah, so I mean that's one thing that I learned, that do not presume everybody knows how to use Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Do not expect everybody will be as what do you call this as easy to learn as yourself, because some of them initially, even they were asking, there will be multiple of channels, they get confused. I think it's more to like yourself being a teacher. That's one thing that I learned as well, that if you want to run a guild, you have to be prepared to teach.
Yeah.
And on top of teaching, the level of patience that you need to have, it's outrageous. it's,
Yeah.
it's it's a lot, because there will be a lot of questions. I think one of the biggest challenges as well is to treat them, and you have to understand that they are not at the same level as you. Even back then, we actually made a mistake as well, thinking that everybody know the mechanics of the game. even when we were calling out for BBDB, people were asking us what does BBDB
Oh
stand for.
yeah.
Yeah, that happened to us too.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get cringe about it, and but that's the thing. I said the patience that you need to
Yeah.
have. It
Mhm.
has to
I,
be big,
yeah, we had to educate a lot of people on that BBDB thing because some people did understand what BBDB was, Bloody Branch Dead Branch. But the main thing that like made people call them out as scammers, which got left them like confused, is because like some of them genuinely just didn't know that they were supposed to summon. They thought that people just needed help with killing their bloody branches and their branches, so they killed and they left, and they were like, once the whole drama started setting off, it was like I really didn't know. So,
Yeah.
that was also another adventure for sure.
Yeah, another thing I think I would like to say is mostly to get people to participate. Because as I tell you that there are a lot of new players in Origin, and as we all know, the hype was very big, where we have about over 10 million people actually pre-register for the game. So out of that 10 million players, I would say probably 80% doesn't really know the mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
So to actually introduce them into the competitive setting, it was a bit tough because all they thought was it was just grinding, going for MVPs, coming
Yeah.
for all these BBDB. They didn't know about Guild League. They didn't know about all this arena, ET, all this kind of thing. So it was a bit tough. And
Yeah.
I think another thing is that we always overlook. I think the one thing that I learned is we always need someone or something to distract the players from, whenever they feel down, from losing an event and whatnot.
Yeah.
Personally, for Crescent, I'm going to tell you a very funny story about Crescent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually have a cult in the guild.
Oh no.
Oh.
So it all started. This is the one thing that we actually use to improve the morale of the members. You have a laugh about it, and generally it promotes all the good things. So the story start when one of my officer, basically his name is Ace. So this guy, he was farming at Mart. I think he was at 64% MA if I'm not
I
wrong.
think you might be in the chat.
So yeah, the cut dropped, and then he was like, okay, I got a mark card. And then he went to Tara Frog, I think. And then he went on and hit it, and he got another card drop.
Oh my god.
And then after that, he went to another place. Let me try to recall. It was Mark, and then I think there was another card. So basically, he got 3 card drop in like a day. So
Wow.
everybody started congratulating him and whatnot. So then the next day, my vice guild leader, Faber, actually told him like, "Can you give me your blessing?" And then on that day itself, that guy got a Hydra card.
Oh my god.
So so we created a page, a channel, and everybody just go on there and ask for a blessing. And as of today, we have people who got Nightmare card. Some actually got their Skeleton Worker card.
Oh
All
my.
this. So these are a few things that we do in the guild, to promote morale, to help everyone connect and be much closer. Because as it is, as what you said, to what you guys communicate from people from C and European side on the Western side, it's a bit tough. So these are all the channels that we do, all the initiative that we take to make sure that people get closer in the guild. Once we understand each other better, the synergy will be better, and of course, the result will be as what we want.
Yeah.
We could actually accomplish all the goals and things that we wanted.
Yeah.
Very funny.
It's always crazy how luck works. And just right now on YouTube chat, somebody mentioned from our guild. Okay, so Dynasty has 3 guilds, right? Like one for each different type of experience. D1, the main guild is usually for like the hardcore competitive. D2 is like for semi-competitive, the people that usually can't make all the guild events. And D3 is usually the casual guild, right? people who just want to be part of the community, all that. And what happened then is that our D3 guild probably collectively has maybe 90% of the MVP cards in the server. So
Holy.
like maybe 80%, 75%, something like that. But like a huge amount of the MVP cards in the server have gone to our third members in our third guild. And we don't really have a cult, but then now we have at least like a belief that like going into D3 is your one-way ticket to getting an MVP card eventually. So
all right, Patty, I'm going to D3. See you
no,
later.
Oh man.
God. That was funny.
Yeah. So moving on to the topic of like cross server.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you were saying?
So with the crossover coming out soon, how's your guild prepared for it, and how are your feelings towards it?
First of all, as I said, cross server can only mean two things to people. Okay, some will take it as a good, what do you call this, morale boost for them to try even harder and try to be more, even more competitive. But some will take it as a situation that will demoralize them. So, for me, going into cross server, there's always that worry, that how will it impact us as a guild. But I have the utmost confidence that most of our members here are all competitive. So we are going to go into cross server strong. And by preparing, we actually started to, what do you call this, train all our members on certain strategies. So we have a few strategies in what do you call this, expected to be used on cross server later on. Because as we know, you need to have a lot of strategies going in, because with different guilds they'll be doing different stuff, so we need to be agile and we have to adapt into that. And as well, I think with the current introduction of Paladin into the lineup, so some of the guys are actually claiming that the class is a bit buggy right now. So we are trying to adjust the strategy, putting Paladin in, as well as trying to, what do you call this, balance out the members and the jobs that we have in the current lineup to ensure the best synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important.
Exactly. So yeah, that's all. I kind of echo that sentiment with people who are taking this as like a way to demoralize them. And again, it's like like I said earlier, right? Like comparison is like the thief of joy. So like when people go into these guilds, it's like you have to understand your cross server, it's a competition. Like you're there to compete. Competing doesn't always be competitive, doesn't always mean like winning. It's always trying to win, or at the very least trying to show up, even if it's something that, even if you're like the dark horse of the competition, even if you're like a guild that is not really seen as somebody who will win it all, right? Because everybody loves an underdog, right? If you show a good performance in versus a guild that you were quote unquote never supposed to even like make it a close fight with, it's like usually you get more accolades for that than actually winning the whole tournament. Like those are the moments that people remember. It's like, if let's say like if X guild goes into a fight with Y guild and Y guild is like the favorite of the tournament, and then they make like Y guild look very shaky, and it's like, wow, this is never supposed to be this close of a fight. And then let's say that let's say that like the favorite ends up winning the tournament anyway. And yeah, I'm sure you've seen this in like a lot of competitions, especially with like esports, where there's like a semi-final that is actually more hype than the actual final. And it happens a lot in esports, and people remember those semifinals more than they remember the finals. So it's always good to just like put your best foot forward and kind of like give it like your best attempt, and actually try to win still, regardless of like what the expected outcome is. So it's making people understand that concept that really makes it hard for for people to grasp, really.
Yeah.
True.
Like just putting up a tough fight. That like reminds me too on NA at one point for I think it was cross server. But I remember we went against one guild and like they weren't like a top guild, but they put up a really good fight where it was like, oh, this was a really fun like guild league. But I
Yeah,
don't remember what guild it was, but like moments like that are like what are like memorable.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think actually going into Cross League server right now, it's a bit tough to say because one thing that actually really affects everything is because of the content, as I mentioned just now. The release is a bit too quick.
yeah,
So it might affect a certain part of it, but as I said, the first week, as per what they announced, would be like a trial. It's just a test, and it will be resetted after that, right?
yeah,
So I think that the general understanding of the whole cross server will be much better after the first week of the trial.
yeah,
So we would actually learn a lot more, and I think once the real cross server starts, it will be much more fun to watch, and I think people will be improving a lot on that, as
yeah,
well as sigils. Right, we have all the sigils right now that comes into play, and yeah, I think it's worth watching, and I know for one thing that uh, most of the guys who are basically the underdogs, we will try even harder than those guys who are, like top whales. Because as you said, we're gonna go die trying to actually
yeah,
win and
yeah,
prove that
Mhm.
even though probably we don't have the items and equipments that you have, but one thing we do have is we are more competitive than you, and
yeah,
we're not gonna give it to you that easy.
yeah,
We will
yeah,
make sure that we put up a good fight at least,
yeah,
and be proud of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Another thing is that's important is like you guys have like the synergy.
True.
yeah. So you know, the one thing that I probably can say about like and I know you mentioned this like a few times with like content being coming out too fast is that it's kind of makes it a lot more difficult balancing wise because of the fact that like sigils if you really if a royal really wanted to they could just easily pay to win that, right? There's
Yep.
an uncapped box in like for 115 yans that you could just spam. um
Mm-hmm.
so what would have otherwise been like slightly more competitive now becomes even more imbalanced. Like sigils to begin with make the game very imbalanced.
Hmm.
It directly nerfs or indirectly nerfs a lot of classes, champions, for example. um, so what do you think about the concept of having balanced PvP? I know they discussed this in the Hearthfire Tales before the game started, but
Mm-hmm.
do you think that because of how imbalanced the cross server is, like a lot of people will not really get too hyped about it? And do you think that maybe if they make it into balanced PvP where it's all about like rotations and individual skill, that like is where it all matters? Do you think that like that's a better move to getting more like hype towards the event? Because the rewards in Odin, they call it the Odin Cup, right? The rewards for it,
Yeah.
including the mount, are very it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And if it's an imbalanced like cross server type thing, it just makes the people who are already all whaled out even more whaled out, right? And I know like
Yeah. True.
in a way
Hmm.
that's by design because the whale guilds will whale even harder because they want that mount, for example. It's a
True.
status symbol. So do you think that like
Uh,
there's ever a chance that they would do balanced PvP RWC style?
to be honest, as I said, at the end of the day, this is a pay to win game, regardless of what
Mm-hmm.
people say.
Yep.
It's one of the biggest factor out there. But as I said, at the end of the day, it's not the ultimate factor, but it's one of the major factors. So, for me personally, is they should have there are, I mean, even if you actually compare it with the previous game that they released, even an F2P actually call it like a whale event.
Mm-hmm.
The cross server is basically a whale event. It's not
Yeah.
catered for the F2P or the mid spenders.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if they don't actually do something about this, the same thing will actually happen to the previous game where we start to merge, and this is actually not healthy. This was actually one of the concerns
Yeah.
that was raised up when the developer actually announced initially that they wanted to release over 100 servers.
Yeah.
So most of us weren't happy because we saw this coming. When it comes to Ragnarok, there's always what do you call this, pay to win element will be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the
Yeah.
things that we are most concerned of is not regarding the whales, it's about the F2P and mid spender being a part of the game. Because as I said, they make up about 80% of the server. Without them, the game won't be enjoyable. You know, if there's only only 50 whales left in a server and all the F2P and mid spender leaves the server, then it wouldn't be a game anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, but one thing that I do understand is among the things they also announced was, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's something called Valkyrie Cup, where you can't actually whale there. You know, they give you a set of preset equipment or something, and then
Yeah.
there, I mean, that's the time where I feel like there's also an event for this F2P and mid spender. But the only thing you guys have to do is to be patient.
Yeah.
So that would be a fair fight. But when it comes to cross server, my advice to people is do not be too demoralized about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
These are the whales that, of course, they are paying to the developers to ensure that the server stays up. So of course they will have the advantage over us, you know. So, but so far, as what I've heard from Origin, they're trying their best to cater for both status
Yeah.
of players. You have the whale events, you have the F2P events, even though they
Mhm.
don't really specifically mention as a whale event,
Yeah.
but we do
Yeah.
know. And then
you
when it
already
comes,
know.
we know. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the mount and whatnot, I think to be honest, this is like ego kind of thing for the whales.
Yeah.
This is like a symbol of status for them. So
Status
let them
symbol.
be,
Yeah.
because they're spending millions of, I mean, hundreds and thousands, or up to even
Up
a
to
million,
millions.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars. Yeah.
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 So for us, we know our capability. The whole point of us joining is to play, to be part of the community, have fun, be as competitive as we can. Let's focus on that.
Yeah.
And when
Exactly.
the event that does come up for us, if the Valkyrie Cup does get announced, that's where we will all be focusing on. Because at the end of the day, one thing I can guarantee you is this: if the Valkyrie Cup does go on, it will have more attention and more
Oh yeah.
participation, and people will be talking
Yeah.
about that more than the Odin Cup.
Yeah.
So don't get discouraged. The
Yeah.
time will come, you know,
It's
and that's where, yeah,
the
you can
reason
actually show off your skill. Yeah.
the reason why like I very have a positive outlook towards it is because I know that at one point they're gonna have to throw the free to play players a bone, right? So the reason why I feel very positive towards it is because the current system in Rue is basically a copy paste of other systems that have worked. One of them notably being like Noah's Heart. It's a little bit less popular, mobile MMORPG, but the current system that they applied in Rue 2.0, which was never always like this. The diamonds, the ang paos that you see, all that, it never used to exist. Is actually a direct copy paste of the Noah's Heart system that they had in place beforehand. It's just like it's just that the currencies, some of them at least, have been changed. The diamonds currency is also a direct copy paste. They didn't even bother to change that, I'll be honest with you. So seeing as they have a something that succeeded in terms of like maintaining player happiness, I think that will definitely contribute to them kind of like reinforcing the fact that, like, hey, if you really want to keep all of your players happy, all of them, you need to throw a bone to the biggest part of your player base, right? Because like,
true.
you know what I mean? It's like if you're a whale and all the free to play quit and all you're left with is a bunch of whales, then you guys are now the average. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest with you, like a lot of the whales, they know that they completely outgear a lot of the free to play like low mid spenders, but they, a lot of times when you hear them talk, it's as if they don't know this fact. And I know like it plays a lot into the ego, And if they don't have these players to, unfortunately, like I hate to say it, but like to kind of dumpster on, then they feel less and less motivated to spend on the game, which is also bad for the game. So in order for a whale to survive in the ocean, he needs planktons, he needs smaller fish, and if smaller fish
Yep.
don't exist, I mean whales can't survive either, and they won't
True.
last. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think another thing I would like to add on that, right? I think since you came from NA, and I think most of the viewers actually came as well from KR server or any other server,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually see when it comes to the progress, right? Over in C itself, it's actually too fast. One of the
Mhm.
biggest comparison that I could actually do is regarding in terms of the titles.
Yeah.
There are some players that
Oh.
even in Korean server right now they're still at 1 star for the gold tier. Over here we're 2 months in, and that's like they already max out the emblem, they max out the feathers. So it generally creates a very big imbalance. But as I said, whales are gonna be whales. We just have to don't give up too quickly. We will get there eventually. We
Mhm.
just have to be patient, because as I said, the ultimate part of
Mhm.
the game, we play to have fun, to enjoy the game, the progress. That's what RO has always been for me personally growing up.
Yeah.
At that time back then when we had to grind so long, and like at, at zombie, at archer skeleton, and slowly
Yeah.
slowly changing jobs. And back then I think I was going crazy for the sakat hat. At the time it was a very big trend. It was so hard to get, and over here it's like so easy to get everything when you have the money, right? So as I said, you do not compare yourself to the guys who have more money. Just stay and just have trust on the developer, because as it is, one good thing about this developer so far that I've seen, they always take our feedback into account, comparing to the previous game that they released. So
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
very good indication that they might actually try their best to accommodate the F2P and the meat spenders as well. So let's have faith. Of course, they're gonna make the whales happy first, and then I
Mm-hmm.
think if they still have a steady decline, I think they're gonna introduce more content for the mid spenders as well,
Yeah.
and as for the F2P.
Yeah. And I think that's like just inherently because of the fact that Gravity, at the end of the day, Gravity's a public company, right?
Yep.
Think about it, like once you're a public company, you have to please your investors, and at the end of the quarter, that's what they're looking for, like your earnings, right? Like
Yep.
they look at that like at the end of every quarter, and they're looking at it, and that's kind of like how the quota that they have to meet, and then the
Yeah.
next quarter they also have to exceed that as well. So that makes
Yeah.
it that's why like you're never gonna see an end to the pay to win mechanics. You can only hope for like maybe some
Yeah.
some respite where they give even more free to play friendly events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think even
Mhm.
for the game currency as well. Actually, when it comes to the in-game currency, personally for me, I prefer the ROX system. I really hope they can actually incorporate that over here in Origin, because even for free to play players back then, diamonds was the main currency in ROX. But even for a free to play, they can actually buy out the diamonds, and try to bid on the items that is expensive.
Yeah.
But over here, we don't have the currency where we can actually switch off the diamonds to neon berries, so that we can actually buy certain items that is not available in the diamond shop. One of
Mm-hmm.
the most obvious one is the gold feathers. There are certain like
Mhm.
mix
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
some of those feathers that is really needed by the F2P. I mean, they should actually introduce a way. Of course, there's always a cap, but they must make it quite flexible so that the server can live on. And this is actually, I think, one of the way that they could actually reduce the imbalance
Yeah.
and ensure. Because when it comes to Ragnarok or any game generally, when you introduce a pay to win system in it, it will never be balanced.
Oh yeah.
The only way to actually go through it is basically to think and try to ignore and focus on yourself.
Yeah.
What you can actually do, just focus on your own progress.
Yeah.
Don't get too hyped up about the others. They are spending at a point where millions of dollars are going out.
Yeah, yeah,
And still you're not even spending thousands of dollars. You're just chilling, buying
yeah,
all your Kafra cards.
yeah,
For me, it's good enough. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how you view the game. Just have fun with it, be competitive, and just do your best.
yeah,
You
yeah.
Mhm.
It's true. And but yeah, unfortunately, like we had intended this to be like an hour, but I think the conversation was just too good to kind of stop here. But we've actually been at it for like an hour and 20 minutes or so. And I don't want to keep you for longer than you had already signed up for. You also
It's all right.
yeah. Again, it was really actually really fun and enjoyable having you here tonight.
Yeah, it was nice having you here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.
So
Yep.
it's been a pleasure for
an
us.
honor.
Yeah, and an honor for
Thank
us
you
to
for
have
all
you.
your inputs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as our first guest that we had over for the crossover discussion when it comes to like guilds. Hopefully, we can get in contact with other guild masters from other servers as well, and kind of like see their input as well. And the thing that I always kind of like look forward to hearing the most is their experiences with RO, because everybody has their own experiences, and it's always enjoyable to hear, because there's always similarities, but then there's always those crazy stories that you hear that it's like, wow, like, yeah, I can believe that would happen in RO based on personal experiences. So
Yeah.
again, thank you so much, emo guy from
Thank you.
Crescent
Oh,
Guild,
thank you
Izlude
for having
1.
me.
Yeah, it was a
All right,
pleasure.
thanks.
You have a good night, and hopefully we can have you back here again in the future.
Yep, sure.
And
Good night,
good luck
guys.
in
Thank you for
crossover.
having me.
Yeah, good luck in cross server as well.
See you in cross server.
See you in cross server.
See you in crossover.
All right. See you guys. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. You have a good
Take
night.
care.
All right. So that's basically it, guys, for this episode of the podcast. And it's been great. It's very great to have Emo here as well. Right, Thai. So Thai, would you like to lead us out?
Oh, well, that was our... No, I'm terrible at this. You go.
All right, guys. That is it for tonight's episode, and I'll go ahead and upload this to YouTube soon. So if you want to have that content to maybe have on your drive to work or something like that, or feel free. And thank you for coming, everybody. Have a good night. See you in the next
Have
one.
a good night.